Sales Playbook is Switzerland's #1 B2B sales and Hubspot agency for fast-growing entrepreneurs to increase pipeline, revenue, and sales efficiency through all-bound pipeline generation, sales enablement, and Hubspot services. Their 300-plus clients include Beekeeper, Bexio, Boostbar, and Brame, who have already achieved go-to-market transformations, such as scaling from 0 to 10 million ARR in 3 years, quadrupling their higher sales velocity, and reducing by 50% their sales customer acquisition costs after working hands-on with Sales Playbook. Go to thesalesplaybook.com to learn more.
90% of happy customers are willing to give a referral. 10% of people ask. There's an 80% gap. It converts on average like 2-3 times better than the average like inbound outbound motion.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Manuel, welcome back to the Swisspreneur Show. It's great to have you again.
Yeah, thanks so much. Pleasure doing this in person after we recorded the first episode. It was number 75, I think, or so.
Yeah.
Back in COVID times, remotely.
It's about time to have you back, I would say. You are the co-founder of Sales Playbook, a sales agency which you built to 7 figures, an annual revenue, and you help more than 350 clients, such as Bexio, Beekeeper, Scribble, just to name a few, many, many more, of course. And you help them to scale sales quickly, efficiently, and without 6-figure mistakes. I love sales, you know that. We're going to dive into that topic. Before we do so, I wonder, what made you want to quit your job and become an entrepreneur in 2019, a few years ago?
I actually wanted to become an entrepreneur back in 2012 after I worked at Tesla, helped the company sell the last Tesla Roadsters in Switzerland. It was a lot of people before me, after me hated the job. It was the typical job description is a CEO of Tesla Switzerland came to me and was come up with an event plan for a summer. I was like, what's the base? 0, look into your colleague's calendar. We did it in 2011. And that was the base. And I loved it, building things from scratch, just going out there, validating quickly, learning so much, diverse jobs to be done. So I had that idea, and my then girlfriend, now wife, actually told me that, well, you might want to go back to a master's degree. And they're well, it's now the time, let's go back, let's do a serious job. Ended up at Accenture, implementing Salesforce CRM, quote to cash. So the CRM loop goes full circle now to Hubspot, actually. And then I want to do that again. And then I got an intro from a friend to build up sales for an AI startup back in 2017, so way before ChatGPT. And then I had the idea again, and after 18 months, there's look, let's go. Let's build an own company. Let's help more entrepreneurs than one company at a time. Let's really learn how to build and scale a company.
So you really got the entrepreneurial bug in that sense. It infected you. At the same time, according to your LinkedIn profile, at least, you're also up for stupid challenges like writing a book in 30 days or doing 1,000 push-ups, all that kind of stuff. First of all, how are these 2 challenges specifically going?
They worked actually better and easier than expected. I mean, it's some of these things. I then said okay, I did 1,000 push-ups. Let's do 1,000 burpees. And I figured out. I think it's always important to understand why do you set a goal? Mm-hmm. Is it to prove something to somebody else, to yourself, or is it to learn, or is it just to out of curiosity if it works? So the 30 days book, it was more an active campaign funnel, one of these 99 box things. I'm just curious how the sales funnel works, right? It needs to be really efficient for 99 bucks. It cannot be a no touch motion, basically. And it was really well done on the copywriting. And I was okay, if I give the person $100, how much is upselling is, how much is value creation, how much do I get? And it was really useful. I was shit, he gets that done. Joshua Sprague is his name, for $100, 0 touch, 0 human work. And I actually got the book done on accountability, and we charged 5 figures, and we need to get a better job to get our clients accountable. Yeah. So this was the beginning of the turn to the agency model, weekly sprints and so on. On the 1,000 push-ups, it worked. I did it later again then, and then it wanted to do the 1,000 burpees. And after 500, I just noticed I had some elbow pains, or I needed from boxing, so I needed to transfer more to legs. And after 500, I was I could do it, but it would probably injure me a bit. And I figured out by 500, like, okay, I just did 1,000 because a friend did 1,000. So let's stop at 500. Like,
So the comparison.
Let's just go home, take a barbecue with the family, like stop to live another day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to some more serious topics. We're here to talk about trust-based selling. Some people also use the term speed of trust. First of all, tell us, what does speed of trust actually mean? What is that for someone who has never encountered that term before?
I encountered the term by the best-selling book by Stephen M. R. Covey, like literally called Speed of Trust. And the whole thesis of the book is that a lot of people, especially in sales and marketing, they try to push people like, hey, you need to sign. It's end of the quarter. Like, hey, just get it done. Like, oh, I give you 10% discount if you sign now. And it's pushing people. And the thing that makes people decide fast, that decides often and like not negotiate around the little things, is actually trust. And we both have people in our lives, like our spouses, for example, where if they tell us like, you need to do X, we will just like, okay, good. Like I trust you.
You don't even question.
Let's do it. Or like our parents, our best friends or so, because we trust them. And we don't need a 17-page contract with terms and conditions and legal approval to move in with our best friend or to go for dinner or to go on vacation. We just assume it works. And then the question is, how do you scale trust like beyond that level as a person, as a offering, as a market offering, as a company, as an ecosystem? And in our space, like in B2B sales, like it's tremendously broken, right? Yeah. I get 10 emails a day and like 10 even LinkedIn messages by now. I get like 4 calendar invites, cold calendaring. I don't know how that's called.
Oh, wow.
Every week on like how AI will scale your business. And that's our biggest challenge, right? The sales playbook as well. Like, how do we restore trust into sales advisory and sales revenue enablement to help people with that?
Yeah, because without trust, there's usually no deal, right?
Yeah.
So it's really essential to build the trust to close some revenue in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I had recently a client and the person said like, look, I was probably like your fastest buyer ever, right? Because we closed a 40K deal in 6 working days. I was like, no, you're number 3 this quarter. Like, how do you do that, right? I was like, yeah, it was like somebody like looked at my LinkedIn content for like a year, then he joined like a Startup Sales Summit, for example, 12 keynotes, all only value, not asking for money. No. Then like looked at 3 case studies, then basically I had a reference call without telling us, right? They just talk to other entrepreneurs, which is great. Yeah. And then jumps on a call and is like, look, I know you, I trust you, I have a reasonable understanding of what I get. So like, when can we start?
That's really cool.
So I signed like 10 plus 50K plus deals in like a week or 2. But I also lost 5 to 10K deals over the period of 3 months after 4 calls. And it was just back and forth. And there's no amount of paper that can fix trust.
Let's start with one level, because there's trust on so many levels along the sales process. But let's start with market trust. You also need that, obviously, to generate a sales pipeline. And in that sense, you mentioned before AI, we get flooded with automated messages, etc. So I wonder, AI, is it a trust breaker or a trust enabler?
It's a trust breaker. Yeah. Like that's pretty clear. Like, because trust is basically from one human to another, or like from one mechanism to another to behave a certain way in moving forward. Mm-hmm. Like, I trust you if you invite me here to show up like on time I trust you to be here. With AI, like, I know that the AI it's just an engine. If somebody has a different prompt engine, the AI is going to do something different, and I'm not prompting. Yeah. So the AI is not accountable or doesn't have integrity to the future in that sense. Mm-hmm. The second thing where I think like AI breaks trust in a lot of motions is like people pretend to be human, but it's actually AI doing it. And I think like, for example, video, like I got asked that every week, shall I like do something like SenseSpark where I can create a video once and I can send it to like, hi Silvan, hi Cecilia, hi Thomas, hi Jerry. And Jerry then expects like, that was actually me sending it. And once the person finds out it's not me, like that's a challenge.
You lose the trust to a certain degree that you could have built.
Right? Because integrity is basically I say I send a personal video to you, but I do something else. Right. If I send a newsletter to you, then there's an unsubscribe button. That's okay. Like if I send it to 100,000 people, if I have a LinkedIn post and 100,000 people see that, you realize it's not me that I wrote that LinkedIn post for you.
Yeah, right. It's more like a broadcasting in that sense.
Yeah.
So then the question is, what is the alternative to AI? What can we actually do if we have limited time, limited resources, like almost all founders have, to really go out there and be successful as a salesperson?
Yeah, I think there's multiple things that you can do, and it always comes back to the trust level, to enable speed, and it's about getting it effective, not efficient. So a lot of time I advise in like client work, but also like accelerators or so, is like, hey, send a postcard, and then people say, but that doesn't scale. There's no AI, there's no automation.
Right.
It's like, yes, but if you close that deal, like it's 100K ARR, how many of those deals do you need to add 1 million? Like 10.
Yeah.
So send a postcard, drive there, meet people in person. Once they're qualified, that's a different conversation.
No.
But the objective is not to just do more of what does not work. Like if you send, like, once I had a client, not going to mention the name, and they had like an email opening rate of roughly 20%. I was like, Manuel, we need to work on the copy to get to 30% reply rate. I was like, the math is not your friend. Like, people who don't open your email cannot reply to it. But can you please stop sending 200 emails per person per day? Because it's a downwards race. I was like, no, we insist on the messaging. We need to send more because it's so low.
Where does that come from? Is that also, I remember a few years ago, it was all about this predictable revenue framework, where it just said, okay, you have to nail that, and then you really scale up the automated emails and all of that stuff. Is that a bit this sort of American model that we try to replicate here, but we forget about the trust part?
And I had Aaron Ross, who built outbound and Salesforce 2 times on my podcast, actually. Like, funny guy, like 10 kids.
He's
like,
super
really,
cool guy,
really,
yeah.
Really funny guy. The thing is, the model was not wrong for 2009 to 12, pretty much, like, or even 15. The thing is, once everybody does something, like, that if the channel works, it gets overworked, and then it detriments, and people working more, and it's a race to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. What happened? Like, for a while, Patrick Trimp and I joked around, like, quick question as a subject line, and like, we should now do long question and then just ask the short one and see if it still works. But I mean, quick question was a great subject line in 2019-20. Like, it was very natural, like, still one quick question, where's the bathroom?
Of course.
And it worked. But if once everybody did it, like for 2020, 21, early 22, like, I got emails from clients like, hey, that could have been like, you did. I was like, well, he's working with us. Like, there's only like 20 companies per niche that do it.
Yeah.
But then everybody started doing it.
Yeah.
The same with multi-sequence, the same with like automated voicemail is now a thing on LinkedIn. The same with basically the sequences like auto invites for calendar. And once everybody does it, just nobody values it.
I really hate the calendar part. Like, who just sends you an invite without talking to you before? Like, this is so rude. Like, crazy. I really hate that. Okay, so I get it. Like, times change, and this was good a few years ago, but it's not really good anymore because everyone is doing it.
Yes.
Let's move to the next trust, customer trust. So from market trust to customer trust, once you already have someone in our pipeline, which practices help us to really promote and build the trust with potential customers?
Proof of concepts are amazing. No, I hate POC's proof of concept with a passion, because it's not about proving a concept, and it actually like lengthens the cycle because there's so many things that can go wrong on adoption, on value creation, and so on. I think what's really helps is if you differentiate like proof in terms of like technical proof. Can you prove it works, right? Like if you're in like product-enabled, product-led motion, can I sign up to Calendly and book a call and like, okay, that works. That's really useful. But then like more often in like mid-market enterprise sales, like high touch motions with 5-6 figure deal size where we at for our clients, especially, it's more of social proof. Can you proactively offer a reference call to a very similar customer? Can you proactively share case studies where you solved something similar? And not like the 10x, everything is amazing case study, but where somebody actually goes on mic, on video. Like all our case studies online are video testimonials. It's almost like, this was difficult. We didn't fix this ourselves because of this is what worked. This is what was challenging during the collaboration, like really authentic.
Yeah.
So it's like an asynchronous reference call. And very often that can save you, like, instead of like a 3 months proof of concept, you just have like a 30-minute reference call. And that solves the trust problem, because nobody wants to do a proof of concept.
Fair enough. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also, I assume founders then also tell you, well, but it's so hard to get the customers to do that content for us, or to even get them on the reference call. Maybe they do it once, but they don't want to do it 10 times. How do you deal with that volume issue potentially?
I think it's an excuse.
Sure.
Like calling, for example, as well. And you need to take away the excuses from sales reps, but also from marketers and founders. I mean, in referrals, it's the same thing, right? Like 90% of happy customers are willing to give a referral. 10% of people ask. There's an 80% gap.
Yeah.
It's a very effective, like it converts on average like 3 times better, like 2-3 times better than the average like inbound, outbound motion. Basically, velocity is much higher due to what we discussed before, but very few people ask because it's uncomfortable. Like, I want something from you. Like,
of course.
I could ask you, like, Silvan, do you know one entrepreneur in Switzerland that could work with us?
Yeah.
But I did before, right? I tried to hire you before, but it's about me making that call and so like, Silvan, can I hire you for this playbook? To politely decline. But I need to ask.
Of course.
And I need to pick up the phone and start dialing versus just sending an email, right?
Is there a perfect time, a perfect moment to ask for that referral? Is it once you directly close them or once you delivered the first value to your customer? Or when is the perfect timing to ask for a referral, or does that simply not really matter?
Ask 2-3 times more often than you feel like. That's just like after sending, like picking up the phone and calling again. Like just once more is probably like not enough to maximize effectiveness. I mean, of course, don't ask if a prospect is angry, right? Like if they lost a beloved one, or if you really messed up on somewhere, like the value creation. But if they're happy on a kickoff call, if they're happy on signing your agreement, if they're happy on like just one thing that worked, like if they say like, thank you for the follow-up email, like you can ask.
Of course. Makes sense.
I even like capture referrals on people who didn't work with us, right? It's like, look, we not work with you. Like we found another solution. Like, hey, that's completely fine. Do you know somebody else?
Yeah, I like that.
So, for example, and I think I can share this, like, I mean, Lars Mangelsdorf referred us to Lunch Lottery. Lunch Lottery was really early stage side business to like the agency. And then Lunch Lottery CEO basically told me like, look, I love what you guys are doing. Like, we're not at a scale where we got enough leverage to invest in this format. But hey, like, let me think about our board member, like our co-founder is on the board of Jung von Matt. And then Sonny Grunewald referred us to Jung von Matt. And that's how we got there, right? And it was a reasonably short sales cycle. Like, otherwise it would be very hard for us to go out there and like, hey, to a marketing agency, like, here's how to set up Hubspot, whatever. And it was very useful. So one client basically telling us like, we cannot continue working, like we cannot invest 5 figures instead of 4, but here's what happened from it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like quite an unexpected turn. So
very much so.
Exactly. The other trust factor is also the team trust. So if a head of sales sets very insanely high ARR quotas, do they come across as trustworthy to the team?
It depends on how the quota was put together. If the CEO basically said, like, we're going to scale from 1 to 10 million in 2 years to the VC to get money and then to look good in front of like the board, and then they drill it down, they scream it to the VP sales and the VP sales screams it to the account executive, then it's absolutely useless, right?
You just hand the pressure down, basically.
Yeah. That's like basically, if I would tell you like, Silvan, like, you need to jump 3 meters high. And I was like, why and how? Like, because I promised the Swisspreneur that you're going to do this. Like, how I'm going to do it is like, I don't know.
Figure it out. Yeah, of course.
And I'm going to be really angry because my CEO pushes me. Once you don't do that, that's bad. If I have a bottom-up model, right? So like, look, the average account executive closes 500K ARR per year, assuming like in these mid-market segments, so you need to close like 10, 50K deal, like one every month, like you have a conversion of like 25%. And I think we can get that to like 35. So you need to have like 3 qualified deals every month to close one deal. And I'm going to help you generate like the 10 sales qualified leads to get to these 3 opportunities to get to this one deal. Let's just know our numbers really well and see where we can tweak average annual contract value, deal size, and velocity to help you.
That's
a different conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. And it also sounds to me that trust, it's very much on all levels that we now discussed. It's very much about being authentic, being honest, being transparent and upfront. So it's really about just, being true to yourself to a certain degree.
Very much so. Very much so. I think that's where it all goes back to, right? I mean, Adam Robinson from RB2B, like retention.com, once put it like, hey, the only remaining moat, like defensible mechanism for your company might be brand and community. which is both a form of trust. Brand is to your person, to your company, and community is through social accountability. Because technology is like, I've been to a company of a friend and like they have a Gen AI solution. Like I literally told it, build an ERP system for penguins. And I literally just waited for 2 minutes, sipped a coffee, and it had like where every penguin lived, which laptop they had, like just constantly took a very absurd example, but it built it, including all the records, fields. I was like, create 20 sample records, and it did it in like 2 minutes, like for free.
It's crazy.
And so technology is just like having nice form fields. It's not going to be defensible. Sending more emails, we discussed that. It's not going to be useful.
No.
And then on the team side, just hiring more people because money is free, like we're not in these economic times.
Yeah, definitely not. And trust takes time to build, right? We all know that from our private lives. It takes time to build trust, but only a second to ruin it.
Yeah.
How do you build it in a business context? Is there anything, we talked about AI, that AI is actually a trust breaker and not something where you can build trust at scale? Is it different in the business world compared to the private world? Can you build trust at a higher scale or a faster scale? Or is it also, it takes time? It's one-on-one interactions and it's slow, but therefore also very valuable.
I think time is an excuse again that things just take a year, right? Like, I just need to know that person for 10 years. Otherwise I cannot be together with them. It cannot be my friend, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I go sparring roughly every Saturday, right? Like box sparring, and like typically there's like 15 guys there, like few girls. And every 3 minutes you change, right? And like last time I went, like there was a guy like 120 kilos, like hey, you look fit, like like pretty much 60% of your weight. So it's like, let's go. But I trust that person immediately then because of the environment to not knock me out, basically.
Sure.
And we spar, and then every 3 minutes I put trust in a new person and that person in me. Yeah. So that's like, you look at each other and like, fine, like let's go. So that's a very short amount of time. Mm-hmm. So there's this concept of 4-7-11 that I need to see a person like in 4 different occasions, like spend 7 hours with them somehow. It doesn't need to be synchronously, and then have 11 touch points, like email, WhatsApp, whatever. Like it's pretty neurobiologically validated.
Wow. 4-7-11.
4-7-11. But if that happens over a decade or at a conference, we've all been to conference, you been like on the cab or so, like on a train station, you met them walking into bits and places. You saw them over lunch, let's say, let's grab a sandwich. You saw them walking out. You went with the after parties, like, hey, I'll invite you for a cab. So you saw them in 4 different locations.
Yeah. And that's cool. So it can be the same conference.
It can be the same conference. You walked in, you met at lunch, you met at a booth, you met at the after party. You basically exchanged numbers, you sent a WhatsApp, you connected on LinkedIn, you introduced the person to somebody else. Yeah. And in the end, you somehow spend 7 hours over 2 days or so with them, just seeing them. Yeah. So it takes 24 hours for the loop.
That's crazy. But I love that example because I think it really shows reality that you don't need to spend a year to build the trust. It can be way faster.
It's the same as in any craft, right? Like sometimes people ask, like, how long have you been working out? Like, how long have you been practicing piano in the next room here? It's like, that's not the right question. That's like, how intense have you doing it?
Exactly.
And how effective have you been?
Yeah.
And I think that's also where the 6-figure mistakes come in.
Fair point. And trust alone is not enough. We also need, as a sales team, we need a efficiency as well inside it. We need a good CRM in that sense to track everything and to make sure that we keep track of the trust that we build. In that sense, word on the street has it that HubSpot is really gaining market share after market share. Why is HubSpot the go-to place for CRMs these days?
I think because Salesforce just moved up market, like 30 billion in ARR, like the basically 10 to 200 person teams just don't move the needle anymore. So Salesforce needs to win these big corporate clients, and then it's really different what the product does, right? Like Salesforce is still great, grew up 5 years as Salesforce, but for teams with like 2 to 200 people, like HubSpot is really the dominant solution, which 80% of entrepreneurs use, we see, because it just integrates marketing and sales, and to the degree you can speak about that customer success. So you literally have everything in one spot. And all the other solutions like Close, Zoho, Freshdesk, and so on, like they just break once you hit 500,000, but latest like 1 million in revenue, because it's isolated. And a big value proposition of a CRM is a single source of truth. And anytime I talk to somebody, a pipe driver, is like, what's your ARR and like, what's your pipe? It's like, oh, let me open a spreadsheet. Like MailChimp, we do marketing. And then here is our scheduling tool. And we have Databox for reporting. And it's like, mate,
that's reality for many companies.
And that destroys trust, right? When you're fundraising, for example.
Yeah, of course.
That's like, if I want you basically like have an apartment in close to Lisbon, right? Imagine you go there and the owner tells you, if you ask like, how many square meters is it? And can you show me around? Like, oh, no, I don't know where I left the key. Might be like 80 meters, might be 120 meters. But let me just like ask my neighbor. I might get back to you tomorrow. And then like the other person is like, no, it's 80. And like, no, it's 120. I was like, I'm not going to buy that.
No, you're like, what am I signing up for?
What am I signing up for? And tomorrow the apartment is like 90.
Yeah.
And does the garden belong to it or not? So if you are not able to make it easy to understand and evaluate and like measure and take decisions in a data-driven way, you're going to lose trust very fast with your board, your investors, your customers, your people. Like you talent will leave.
Yeah.
And if a professional that you highly value leaves, that's a 6-figure mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, when we talk about excuses, we hear often founders say, yeah, HubSpot is great, but if I really want to fully execute on it, it's super expensive. Is that an excuse or is that reality?
I think like HubSpot is great in terms of growing with you to the extent you need it to. I mean, it happens. What we see is that like startup founders get like a 75% discount in year one, and they happily buy everything, Operations Hub and Service Hub and marketing and everything in the enterprise edition. Yeah. And they actually only need Sales Hub Professional, and it gets them very far. And they only need Marketing Start, and it gets them very far. And they never need Operations Hub. No. Sorry, HubSpot.
No, but it's true. That's reality.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's like, I had somebody and they did like 500,000 in AR, and it's like, we're spending 50K on HubSpot. Like, how? We do like 4x that at the time, and we spend like 10K a year. How do you spend it? Yeah, we have everything, but now the startup discount went away and we locked in. And yeah, but then if you 10 people give the revenue people a sales professional seat for $100 a month, and give your techies like a view only license for like $15 a month for zero, depends on your setup. Mm-hmm. And then they can still view all the deals, right? If somebody calls as a software engineer, they can still see what happened, what the client really wrote for product management and so on.
Of course. Yeah, I think that's good. Like, have the founder mindset and be scarce with your resources. Don't blow all the money on your CRM.
No, really don't. But I mean, on the other hand, like CRM is probably the only application as a startup, as an entrepreneur, where like monthly doesn't make much sense. You don't want the monthly agreement for your CRM because you're not going to change every month.
Hopefully not. Yeah.
Yeah, but it really, I think like I wouldn't sign a multi-year deal as like a startup. Like things change, but a 1-year agreement makes sense. So you also commit as a company.
Well, there you could also say, well, if things don't work out, you'll be bossed anyway with your company.
Yeah, for sure. But we just see people is like, oh, now we do like 3 months with Breakhold, and then we try this CRM, and here we got a deal, and it confuses the hell out of like your revenue team.
Of course,
because people don't want to adopt like how they live.
No, like switching CRM is one of the biggest nightmares I experienced. It's like really painful.
I started to compare it to going to the dentist, like the dental health, like brushing your teeth with like a good brush and investing $100 versus 10 into electric one or so.
Yeah.
And so in the supersonic, ultrasonic one, like at the beginning, it's very inexpensive. Like you spend like 2 times 2 minutes a day. You can wait, and then you're going to brush your teeth like for dental hygiene. You're going to spend $200. Or you don't do that and you don't set it up professionally and you wait further, but then you need to pull out teeth, and then you're going to spend 4 figures and eventually 5.
Yeah.
So why not get it done really early on?
Yeah.
Why not get HubSpot free when you start, like day one, click sign up, sync your emails, calendar invites, like notes. Why not get Sales Professional once you hit 100K, 250K, and it's going to set you up for like until 7 figures.
Which is great. Yeah, that's where you want to go. And nevertheless, a CRM is only as good as its processes and people behind it.
Yes.
So what are some best practices that you can share here to really keep your company, your startup in order when it comes to the CRM? Because it's really garbage in, garbage out in that sense.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's like your website, right? Like I can go and take Webflow and take a template and build a website, which I did like 2 times, and it's okay. But that you're always gonna mess things up. It's gonna become Frankenstein very much if you let Manu build the Webflow website. So get a professional to set it up like the way you do revenue. Like start with the customer journey, the sales process, like the exit criteria, like who does what, like what are the handover criteria. Set up reporting in a way that is consistent. Like if you change reporting criteria and data quality every 3 months, like you cannot compare. What is a sales qualified lead? It needs to be the same criteria, same flow. Get workflows in as early as possible, buying back your time, seeing that the same things happen the same way.
Yeah.
Get templates, snippets, meetings, quotes, products like this stuff in very early, that the same people sell the same things the same way. And in my thing, like, hey, that's not a big deal if we just iterate. But if you sign as a SaaS company like a 1-year deal and you set it up the wrong way, like not 1 year later, that's still bothering you, right?
Of course.
So why not set it up correctly from day 2?
And I think there we often also forget that scaling it, of course, technology helps you along the way, but scaling really happens with people that you hire and that you put in charge, etc. So I think that's a core message here, that get this right, train your people so you really have a top-notch single source of truth.
Yeah, and you actually need far less people, right? So we've seen that play out like 2020 to 2024, and like many clients we started, they had like 1 or 2 account executives full stack for like pipeline generation and closing. It's hard these days to get salespeople to pick up the phone and generate different conversation. I mean, could you do it? Like if a founder basically is like, hey, you will get this job as head of sales if you sign up to generate pipelines. I'm like, sure. I was like, do you trust the person to do it just because they sign an employment agreement? Does the sales professional trust the founders? Like you will not need to cold call, like based on what? So this is where like salespeople leave after 6 months again.
Exactly. There's a high turnover. I still see many startups making these mistakes.
Yeah, like for sales leaders, it's roughly like 12 months, which is not cool if your sales cycle is 6 months and your ramping time is 6 months. So once they close the first deal, they leave.
Of course.
And with SDRs, it's even worse. I think it's like 6 to 10 months.
That's crazy. Well, like there's also trust, right? So what can we do to improve that? Because that's one of the biggest waste of resources for the employee, but also for the startup for at the same time. It's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, for everybody. So first you paid the salary, right? Which is like 50 to 150K.
Some cost.
So that's just money that went out that you probably wouldn't have need to spend, because people are not maximum effective within year 1 or so. Just effect. And then the second one is like the time of like the leadership it takes to find, to source, attract, sign, onboard, ramp, and develop the talent. So that's also gone. That's like often 6 figures. But the highest cost is probably the hole it leaves in your game, right? If somebody leaves and you need like 6 months to find, sign, ramp somebody again.
No.
Like if you assume that an account executive, for example, closes like $500,000 in ARR, and there's like a 4x multiple or like a 5x multiple in enterprise value on that, I guess like 500K times 4. That's like 2 million.
Yeah.
And even if you lose half a year, that's $1 million that you lose in enterprise value.
No. That's crazy. I never thought about it that way, but it makes actually a ton of sense.
It is actually really where you see the gaps between early Series A and Series B. Like once people, like they hustle their way like 0 to $1 million, like founder-led sales.
Sure, yeah.
And then like they hire a ton of people. They maybe raised like a 5-10 million Series A seed round in the old times.
Yeah.
And then they hired 2 SDRs, 3 account executives, 1 RevOps engineer to like tell everybody what to do, and then 1 head of sales who's just been a glorified account executive. And then they expect 6 people to deliver 6 million because they did 1.
Yeah.
And everybody's like underutilized, doesn't have enough pipeline, doesn't have enough trust, doesn't have enough structure. And then strange people like us sometimes like get asked like, hey, would you like to coach people? And like, can you train them and can you help them be accountable and like get better? It's like, oh no, I'm not going to invest like 25K or like 50K into my team. I just pay everybody that like every week.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay out 50K in salaries every week, but I'm not going to invest like 50K over 6 months to make them successful and let them stay here.
Yeah. It's a clear no-brainer what you just described. Besides working with you, what tips would you give people, to say, hey, we've been all there. We made these mistakes and they can be extremely costly. What can we do to avoid them?
I think just learn from people who've done the mistakes before.
Yeah.
So for me, there was 2021. I reached out to Jerry Meyer from like, hey, look, Jerry, you seem to have like built 2 really successful companies, like an agency and a SaaS company. One's with capital, like ones without venture capital.
Yeah.
Like you probably like ones to startups, ones to mid-market. And like I'm stuck in between, right? Like what shall we do? Like you probably can do many things great, but you might have made a few things which you would do differently. And ever since like nearly 4 years now, it's been invaluable to learn from him, for example. It's been invaluable to learn from other peers, like, hey, how do you structure things like from 1 to 3 to 5 million?
Yeah. He's one of the best salespeople out there, I feel.
Yeah.
And a bit underrated at the same time, like people don't think that he's such a great salesman.
Most really great salespeople, you wouldn't think of them as salespeople when you go out there.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a few ones like Lars Mandersdorf, you give him the sales acumen,
sure.
Like dressed up.
He lives in brief sales.
He lives in brief sales, but he's also very humble, right? Which sometimes doesn't get across. But he's also like, I got in a chief revenue officer at Yoko to learn, like, because I want to get better. Every time like I meet him, he asks me questions like, how do you see X? Like, so it's constantly learning. Like Patrick Trümpe, like one of the best like startup salespeople, is very, very humble, very not loud, right? Like it's just constantly reading, reflecting and so on. If somebody's really loud, like be wary that how much is talk and how much is walk.
Yeah. Good recommendation. In the end, that's again about the trust, right? It's probably easier to build trust with people who are more silent but deliver what they say versus people who are just loud and screamy but don't really walk the talk.
Very much so. Very much so. I once had a guy like Lucas Notaris from Visium, right? He's a trained chef, which I highly respect, from a work ethic, customer centricity, consistency. And then he's like, look, I want to see like who basically like eats the food. So I was like a maître de service. So I went out, so I did both roles. And then he was constantly like, we really struggle to like find senior salespeople. And like, I just fired the person again. It's like, why? Like they closed for less than I did. I was like, how much do you close? Like 1 million. I was like, yeah, how many salespeople do you know that close 1 million a year? I was like, no, per quarter. I was like, how do you close like 4 million in like a roughly 10 million company that you built there? Like, how many people do you know that close 4 million a year? And like, not at Salesforce, right? In a small company. Like, no, but I'm like 29 and I'm a trained chef. These people should do better, right? So he was never a high ego around him, but I would trust him anytime to sell both software or service.
Definitely. That's a great story. Yeah. Now, what else can sales teams do to build trust? We talked about the different levels of trust, etc. We've talked about the CRM, but there's so many other things from the whole palette that I can choose from. So what else can salespeople do?
I think salespeople to really care, like to really go deep and say like, hey, let me help you solve problems. There's still this legendary story around like the largest Salesforce deal in history. So one guy tried to sell to, I think, like of a Berkshire Hathaway company, like the insurance group, which are like 100,000 people. And he was like, nah, we don't trust you. Like, you don't understand. We don't trust you organically. I mean, literally, we don't trust you. You don't understand insurance and so on. The person went back, got his insurance broker license, became one of the highest earning reps in the insurance business, like of the best performing ones, bought himself Salesforce because he made him better.
Wow.
Then went back to the company. And that was like a 1-2 year education, right? Mm-hmm. So I went back and was like, look, I went from 0 to a top performing rep, and I couldn't do it. Like without Salesforce, I would have closed like 5 million a year. And now I did 8. And that's what your team will experience in terms of uplift due to X, Y, Z. I was like, holy shit, like, do you want to start with us? Like, no, I want you to buy Salesforce now because you see that it makes a material double-digit difference to your business at scale.
You basically created your own case study in that sense. Wow, that's crazy. And we also saw you're giving away a lot of great and free resources on LinkedIn. So people listening to this podcast here now, where should they head to if they want to really grasp the full potential and full value of your free resources and templates that you give out?
Go to thesalesplaybook.com. We just relaunched our website actually yesterday.
Oh, nice. I need to check it out as well.
Happy to. So it should be easy to understand. We're constantly iterating. And then, I mean, the resources are probably useful in terms of the ebooks and the worksheets. And so we'll give everything away for free, which other people charge, like info products and so on, all these things. Like take them, be successful, don't give us money. In terms of trust, the most useful thing is probably the video case studies, because it's actually fellow entrepreneurs that just say what they think. Like it's pretty non-scripted, and people are like, look, this was challenging, this was tricky, this was good, like this is what we learned. And then call them, talk to the ecosystem.
Yeah, perfect. And if you had to summarize your entire sales philosophy, I know almost asking for the impossible. In one single piece of advice, what would you say? What would you recommend to people?
If you want to make 1 million, make others 10.
Say again?
If you want to earn 1 million, like in booked revenue, like help other people make 10 million.
Yeah.
Like create 7-figure value if you want to charge 5. Create 8-figure value if you want to charge 6. Like even get like 2 zeros in between.
Yeah. So create value for the people you serve ultimately.
Yeah, it boils down to that, right? I mean, Jason Lemkin on SaaS to Europe just said like, hey, just build, right? Like economic downturn, this, that, AI, just build, just help people be successful.
Exactly. That's the great philosophy to have. Now, to wrap up today, Manuel, we also have some rapid fire questions. I'm just going to fire right away. Which trust is the most important one for you? Market, customer, or team?
Team.
Because without the team, nothing else matters.
People make customers successful and customers going to tell the story. If it's a good one, like 2 times. If it's a bad one, 20 times.
Yeah, that's true, actually. What's your favorite lead generation channel at the moment?
LinkedIn content for us specifically. For clients, it really depends on the ideal customer profile.
In a B2B SaaS where you go towards enterprise customers, what would you use there today?
It depends on your ideal customer profile. If you sell to public, for example, and you sell to like the city of Zurich, these people might not be apart from like Cody Mao or so like on LinkedIn. True. If you sell to real estate or hospitals, it might be that you need to write letters. It might be that there's one industry conference, which used to be the case in car retailing in Geneva or like Basel World in watches for all the B2B2C.
Yeah. So figure out where your ICP hangs out.
Yeah.
AI in sales, yay or nay?
Yay, because it helps you create copy and messaging so much faster on costs of inaction or so, a few things. Nay, if people use it the wrong way.
Like trying to scale things with AI.
Trying to scale things that don't work.
Exactly. Cold calling or cold messaging?
Cold calling.
That's a clear one. It's probably underused these days, I imagine.
Yes, very much so. And because it's the opposite of cold email and LinkedIn. Yeah. Like because so few people pick up the phone, like, I mean, your connection rate like is fantastic. Like it has never been better. Like people actually like don't get cold.
No.
And a great cold call any time of the day.
It's a bit like in real estate, right? You want to find out and identify the undervalued real estate piece, and that's where you want to invest. So this is very much the same thing.
Cold calling is hugely undervalued, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's not only cold, by the way. It also for customer success, for sales, for kickoffs. Just always...
True.
If you have a number, call. If you don't have the number, find it.
Yeah. And that's easy these days, right? To find the number.
Relatively. Yeah. Mobile phone numbers are a bit harder, but works.
Fair enough. And the last question for you today, what is the most important skill of a good salesperson?
Urgent curiosity. Besides integrity on a human level, but urgent curiosity to really want to understand why has the customer not solved the problem before? Like what prevents them? Like how can I make this person successful? Mm-hmm. And to not care about like a trigger word to just like how many licenses do you want?
Yeah.
But really like, hey, will this fix your problem? What else? Like what do you need to drive cultural change? Like how does it affect your life? How does it affect your team, right? How does it affect shared beliefs within a company?
And that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, these are usually the best salespeople.
Yeah, because they really care. And people feel it if somebody wants to make money or solve a problem.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way to end the episode. Manuel, thank you for coming to the studio this time after COVID. All the best and thank you for your sales wisdom.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.